My name is Marcus Webb, and I want it on record that the worst day of my life started with a broken coffee machine, not an alien invasion. Priorities matter here. The coffee machine betrayal happened first, at 7:12 a.m., in the break room of Fenwick Logistics Warehouse 7, where I have spent the better part of a decade supervising forklifts and pretending I have career aspirations. The machine made a sound like a dying accordion and produced exactly zero coffee. I said several words to it that I am not proud of. Then I went outside to sulk in the parking lot like a functioning adult, and that is when the sky opened up like a zipper made of light and something the size of a football stadium decided our humble warehouse district was a good place to park. I want to be clear. I did not scream. I made a noise. There is a difference, and I will die on that hill. The ship, if you can call something that big and that quiet a ship, as opposed to, say, a geological event, settled onto the cracked asphalt with barely a sound, crushing exactly one abandoned shopping cart and somehow missing every car in the lot, including mine, which honestly felt like favoritism from the universe for once. Within 20 minutes we had helicopters, news vans, a suspicious number of men in unmarked black SUVs, and roughly 400 people who all had the same idea I did, which was get closer and look at the thing instead of, leaving. Humanity, everybody. We see something that could kill us in 9 different ways and our collective response is, let me get a better angle for my phone. A door, a hatch, a mouth, some kind of orifice, I genuinely do not know the correct terminology, opened on the ship's underside, and out came the alien. I need you to understand something before I describe her. Every movie prepares you for aliens completely wrong. You expect little green men, or beautiful ethereal glowing beings, or xenomorphs with acid for blood. What climbed out of that ship was somewhere between a mantis and a very elegant crocodile, roughly 8 feet tall, covered in plating that shifted color like an oil slick, with too many eyes arranged in a way that made my brain itch trying to process it. Naturally, being the tactical genius that I am, I muttered under my breath, well, that's not something you see every day, and apparently my mouth does not understand the concept of an indoor voice, because I said it loud enough that the alien's head snapped directly toward me. All 400 people, all the cameras, all the guys with guns, every single one of them turned to look at me too, like I'd just volunteered for something. I would like to formally state, for the historical record, that I did not volunteer for anything. The alien stared at me. I stared back, because apparently that's what you do when you're about to die, you make eye contact with your murderer like it's a job interview. Time did that thing where it stretches out and gets thick, and I had approximately 400 thoughts, most of them variations of this is it, this is how I go, no obituary is going to mention the coffee machine and that feels unjust. Instead of vaporizing me, the alien made a sound. A low clicking hum, almost musical, like a cello being played by something with 7 extra joints in its fingers. Then she took one single step toward me. The crowd gasped. Not screamed, gasped, like they were watching a wedding proposal. I had no idea what was happening, and frankly, neither did the soldiers, judging by how many of them looked at each other instead of at her. That was when the government showed up to explain things badly, which is apparently their specialty. They produced a man named Dr. Aldrich Finch, a xenolinguist who looked like he had been personally dragged out of a nap to be here and was deeply unhappy about it. He had a translator device strapped to his wrist that looked like a smartwatch had a baby with a walkie-talkie, and he would not stop adjusting his glasses, which is a nervous habit I recognized immediately because I do it with my own glasses when my manager asks me a question I don't want to answer. So, Finch said, clearing his throat approximately 6 times, this is going to sound insane, but her species, they're called the Veil, by the way, lovely people, mostly, they have this thing. A bonding response. It's biological, not really something they choose. Certain individuals emit a compatible bio-signal, and when a Veil encounters someone who matches, it just happens. It's exceptionally rare. It's never once been recorded with a human. Okay, I said, very calmly, considering. What happened, exactly? Finch looked at me the way you look at someone right before you deliver truly catastrophic news. She's chosen you, he said. As a mate. I laughed. I want that on the record too. I laughed, loudly, in front of 400 civilians, several dozen armed federal agents, and one very large alien who was still staring at me with the patient intensity of someone waiting for the punchline. There was no punchline. Finch was not joking. Nobody in a beret with a rifle was joking. The alien absolutely was not joking, judging by the way her plating had shifted to a deep, almost violet color that Finch quietly informed me was apparently the veil equivalent of blushing. There has got to be a return policy, I said. Nobody laughed. Tough crowd. They gave her a shortened name for human convenience, because apparently her full name involved 11 syllables and at least one click that no human throat could physically produce. Kesthara became Kes. I found out later she thought this was hilarious, in the sense that Vale find human brevity charming the way you find a toddler mispronouncing a big word charming. Kes, for her part, seemed remarkably unbothered by any of this. While I was having what I can only describe as a full-body identity crisis, she tilted her head at the crowd, made a sound Finch translated as, "Interesting, they're all so loud," and then looked directly at me and asked, through the translator, "Are you always this sarcastic, or is this a special occasion?" Great. My future alien wife had jokes. Fantastic. Exactly what I needed. What followed next was several days of the most aggressive bureaucratic circus I have ever witnessed, and I once had to file a workers' comp claim after Gary from receiving forklift himself into a shelving unit. Men in black suits appeared with non-disclosure agreements roughly the length of a phone book. Someone tried to make me sign a document titled Acknowledgement of Interspecies Diplomatic Cohabitation Protocols, which sounds like something out of a bad sci-fi tax form. A colonel with a face like a clenched fist explained to me, with a straight face, that I was now considered a matter of planetary security. I asked if that came with a raise. Nobody found that funny except Kes, who made the clicking hum sound again, which I was starting to understand was her laugh. Communication was, to put it generously, a disaster. The translator devices worked maybe 70% of the time, and the other 30% produced results that ranged from confusing to deeply alarming. At one point I offered Kes a thumbs up after she successfully identified a hamburger, and she recoiled so violently she knocked over a folding table, because apparently among the Vale, that gesture is roughly equivalent to a fairly graphic threat involving dismemberment. In turn, I nearly had a heart attack the first time she extended what I now know is a friendly greeting, because it looked exactly like she was preparing to bite my head clean off. Despite all that, something started happening that I was not prepared for. We started figuring each other out. She had this dry, blunt way of talking, once the translator caught up, that reminded me uncomfortably of myself. She asked questions like a scientist and made observations like a stand-up comedian who'd never learned to filter herself, which, again, uncomfortably familiar. She thought human sarcasm was the single greatest invention our species had ever produced and made me repeat jokes just to watch other humans react to them, like I was some kind of comedy translator for a species that found irony genuinely fascinating. I won't pretend it turned into some grand romance overnight, because that would be a lie, and frankly the last thing this situation needed was more lies. But I stopped flinching when she got close. I started saving her the good jokes. Small things. Then the second ship arrived, and it did not park gently. This one hit the atmosphere like it had somewhere to be and didn't care what got in the way. It was smaller than Kessa's vessel, sharper, built with the kind of aggressive angles that even someone with zero xenoarchitecture knowledge could recognize as not here for a friendly chat. Kessa's plating went a color I hadn't seen yet, something between gray and static, and Finch, sprinting toward me with his glasses nearly falling off his face, confirmed my worst suspicion. "That's a Vale enforcement vessel," he said, breathless. "They don't recognize the bond as legitimate. Cross-species bonding is considered a violation. They're here to sever it." "Sever it how?" I asked, already knowing I wasn't going to like the answer. Forcibly, Finch said. Sometimes permanently. A figure emerged from the second ship, taller than Kess, armored in something that looked less like clothing and more like a weapon that happened to be wearable, plating the color of a storm cloud. It spoke in a series of sharp clicks that needed no translation to understand the tone. This was not a diplomat. This was someone who had come to collect. Kess stepped in front of me. Actually stepped in front of me, putting her entire 8-foot frame between me and 800 pounds of angry armored alien enforcer, and something about the absolute, unshakable certainty of it, cut straight through every ounce of sarcasm I had been using as a personality shield for the past week. So I did the single dumbest, most human thing I have ever done in my life. I stepped up beside her. Look, I said to the enforcer, translator whirring frantically to keep up, I don't know your customs, I don't know your laws, and frankly I didn't ask for any of this either. But where I'm from, you don't get to just show up and take something because you've decided it's inconvenient. So you're going to have to go through both of us, and honestly, buddy, I've survived worse than you. I've survived Black Friday inventory at a warehouse with 3 forklift operators and 1 working printer. You have no idea what you're dealing with. There was a long silence. The enforcer's head tilted, plating shifting through several confused colors, clearly trying to process why the small, soft, unarmed human was talking to it like it owed him money. And then, astonishingly, the enforcer laughed. Or made the veil equivalent of one, a rattling clatter that Finch later confirmed was genuine amusement, layered with something almost like respect. It said something short to Kess, gave me one long unreadable look, and returned to its ship without another word. The vessel lifted off within the hour, and just like that, the crisis that could have ended my life, my relationship, and possibly a small chunk of the eastern seaboard evaporated because I mouthed off to an alien the way I mouth off to my landlord. Turns out humanity's greatest diplomatic asset is not our technology, our military, or our carefully worded treaties. It is our profound, unshakable inability to know when to shut up. Kess found this endlessly, deeply funny. She still does. She brings it up constantly, usually at the worst possible moments, usually translated with far too much enthusiasm for how embarrassing it is. So that's where I am now. 6 months later. I have an alien fiancé who thinks Earth sarcasm is the height of intellectual achievement, a government liaison who still hasn't recovered from the coffee machine story, and a coffee machine that, for the record, still does not work, because apparently intergalactic diplomacy takes precedence over appliance repair in this economy. Nobody warns you about any of this in school. Nobody tells you that one random Tuesday, the universe is going to hand you an 8-foot alien wife, a planetary security clearance, and in-laws who occasionally show up in warships. But here we are. If you'd told me a year ago that my life would end up here, I'd have laughed in your face and asked what you were smoking. Now I just laugh, because honestly, at this point, what else is there to do? Somebody get me a working coffee machine. I've earned it.